Well, everyone, we're doing something a little bit different today. Usually I watch the movie and then do the interview, but I have some folks here who have a short film coming out. They're doing the Indiegogo campaign as of this recording, and it is for a Western, which sparked my interest because that is a genre that has been never really gone away, but hasn't grown in popularity for many, many years. And so I have Justin McDavitt
Hi.
and Brandon Larson.
Hey there, everybody.
Excuse me, throat's a little dry. So it's just heat. Brandon, you wrote the script, and
Yes,
Justin, you're also in front, and you helped produce as well. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
In fact, I looked at the credits and I'm like, in true indie spirit, our three principals in front of the camera are also three principal folks behind the camera. Uh,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so, Justin, if you could tell us a little bit about what Scar is about.
Uh, well, actually, I think that that would better be handled by Brennan. He
By
oh,
the
I
created
by the
appreciate
created the
it.
writer.
world.
Yeah, by
I
He
the
was
created the
gonna
writer.
world, so I
I
always
figured
like
that
to
was gonna be too
Yeah.
easy of a pick, so I figured I'd try you, but that's okay. Brandon,
no,
go
I can
ahead.
I can I
Yes.
can absolutely answer it. It's just that when we talk about worlds and things like that, I like to default to the writer,
Sure.
uh, just because they created it.
Yeah, you bet. Brandon,
Yeah.
Scar.
Yes. It's two gold rush era prospectors. They make a discovery and they're torn apart by greed and the love of a woman.
um, Classic motivators for almost any story you've heard, but definitely for a Western. So I've got to ask Brandon, why a
Yes.
Western?
I've always wanted to do a Western. Specifically, this is a period Western,
Hmm.
and I know that you like period pieces. And so uh, with this, I wanted to set it in the gold rush specifically because we're here in Northern California. So there's that draw for us here locally. Something that we're passionate about. We love California, so it brings us home, right? So the story's actually here, why people migrated out here in search of gold. And so that's always been something that I've wanted to write about. And I did extensive research on that, going to the
Hmm.
public library before I even started writing. So uh, that's a lengthy process. I wonder if you'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you went into writing it because some people just throw cowboy hats on people and set it in the desert, and there you go. There's a Western. So,
No, yeah, I felt that this would be even more interesting, not the typical, spaghetti Western, or I felt like this could be a unique take on a Western. And so, what went into the writing, it was over 50 hours of writing. There were four different drafts. Early in the stages, I had Justin take a look at my first draft and we just sort of built from there to keep improving it. So this was a lengthy process. I start with flashcards, so I'll just write just basic an idea of, and I try to get a beginning, middle, and end before I even begin writing a draft.
awesome, awesome. And yeah, that's great that you put that work into it because yeah, I think that helps even maybe subconsciously, if not consciously, in your work. I'm sure as well, just by putting yourself in that world. Now, Justin, what was it that drew you to Scar?
I like Brandon, I am a fan of Westerns,
Mm,
in period pieces. There's certain roles and genres that interest me that I don't always get an opportunity to play in. And this was the first Western. Well, actually, sorry, I shouldn't say that. This is the second Western that I was given offered a role in, and I that immediately piqued my interest. And then looking at the story, it had a lot of interesting elements to it. And being able to work with Brandon is kind of a unique situation because we've been working together for a while. So when it comes to the characters, he's designing characters that fit into our kind of like our behaviors
Mhm.
and the way that we would speak. So it's really easy to pick up these roles and build them into living characters.
So, Brandon, you tailored the characters a bit to folks that you knew to
Right.
help round these out because I imagine you kind of had an idea who you wanted in this film.
I knew that I wanted to work with Justin again.
Mhm.
We previously did community theater together, so I wanted that opportunity to be able to work with him in an film and have a more. We actually didn't even have a scene together in the first play we were in, so I don't think we technically got the chance to really act with each other. So I wanted a prominent part for him and myself. We actually did not know who Kate was going to be, so I didn't
Mhm.
have anybody specifically in mind for that. So Justin was a part of the casting for that. He took the lead on that.
Mhm. Was that a extensive search, Justin? Did you do a call out? Did you get auditions, or how did you go about to find your Kate?
So yeah, I would say it was a pretty extensive search.
Mhm.
We put it out on the platforms for people to submit to, as well as people that we knew in our networks. And we had, I believe it was about a 30-day span that people were given the access to submit, and we'd review their auditions. We got, I would say, probably about 150 submissions for that
Wow.
time period.
Mhm.
We ended up calling back, I believe, 15 people to do follow-on work. And then, oddly enough, while we were debating about the crew members that we were going to take on, which also came about with the director deciding on picking a director, we reviewed her work, and we were interested in also seeing if she wanted to come on board as Kate and seeing if she
Mhm.
could flesh out that character. And it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, that is fortunate to find the talent like that. But I think the pool like that in indie, it seems like in indie cinema especially, is growing a bit to where you have people who are doing multiple hats. I mean, it's always been a tradition in indie film, but people who are wanting to do and handle and can do both roles in front and behind the camera, which can be a challenge, I imagine. Well, you both know because you're both in front of the camera and you're behind the camera.
Right.
Uh, so, Brandon, does that make it easier or harder with you being the writer to be in front of the camera since you know all the dialogue?
Yeah, I would say it's easier in that aspect, but I would say that the producing aspect is super challenging
Oh, yeah.
because I was doing the location scouting, I was doing many things for this, including props. So it was every day I was working on something up until the day of the shoot. So every day I was doing something. I had no days off.
Yeah, I was wondering for location shoots, though you're out in California, I imagine it's a lot easier to find Western type settings for for where you're at out in California. But how'd you go about picking the locations? Did you already have some locations in mind, or did you kind of travel around? Or
Yes, I had a specific location in mind, which was Dutch Flat, and I, in terms of the history, so this is actually a specific place where they did a lot of gold mining and prospecting, and so in terms of about 1848 to 49, roughly in there, we started to see a lot of that, and then when in terms of the the draw, right? It started in 1848, and then as years kept going, it kept getting more and more competitive. And actually, historically people made money off of selling of goods and at a higher price. And so uh, this was not an easy life by any means. And you get that with this film. The struggle is real. And honestly, it relates to today. There's still that element that's there's that draw. I actually went and did some gold panning in Coloma, which isn't far from here, to learn how to gold pan, to really get into the character.
So people are still out there panning for gold and such today.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So is it still that big out there, or has it, Tipper? Did you run into a lot of people, or?
I met people that were prospectors actually in the search of the location itself, because I did it very much grassroots effort, getting to know the locals there in Dutch Flat, and that's how we were able to get some really key locations. One of the locations actually fell through; it got flooded, and so
Oh,
I had to on the spot find a new location. Rather quickly. I would say it took me another week, and like we were coming up to the deadline. So if I didn't find one more location, it was half the film wasn't going to get filmed.
wow.
And so that would have delayed us months if I
Hmm.
didn't find this one key critical outdoor location. And so yeah, and there's a historical hotel there in Dutch Flat, so you get to see a lot of actual antique um furniture in the hotel.
Oh, so those furniture, because I saw a bit of the trailer. Thank you, Justin, for sending that. I saw the teaser trailer for it, and I did see that there was authentic looking furniture in there, and that was at the hotel.
Yeah, so actually all that stuff is
Hmm.
is part of the hotel. We didn't bring in any of it.
Hmm.
Brandon and myself actually went out to the town of Dutch Flat and the hotel and some of the other properties to scout out where we thought would be good locations for the film set. And we like coming into the hotel and seeing the rooms, we can, kind of like fell in love with them right away because they were perfect. Like
Sure.
we didn't have to do anything but bring the cameras in and the people. Like they were
Right.
ready to go.
And
Yeah.
budget wise, that makes it a lot easier, right? When everything's ready to go, as opposed to bringing all of that into a studio and having to do that.
That's why I'm always impressed when indie film productions like yourself and that do period pieces, because I do love period pieces. I think we need more of them. But I always know
Yes.
too, indie films do it on a budget. So it trying to capture, and if you want to sell your period, you've got to get those authentic, because if you don't have the setting feeling authentic, you kind of lose that edge, don't you? A little bit, or that advantage of
Yes.
selling your idea.
I think you're absolutely right. If it doesn't look authentic, it pulls you out of the piece and you get distracted and then you
Mhm.
start looking for other inconsistencies with the production. So I absolutely agree with that.
Mhm.
And with our film, it doesn't do that. It's very much when you see this film, it's going to look real. It's going to really, I feel that people are going to be drawn in with what they're seeing. And I think building on that, we want to keep building with this story. And I think that that's what makes Indiegogo and other platforms so necessary for indie filmmakers such as myself and Justin, to give us that opportunity to raise funds, because we're not the studios, but we should be able to make films as well,
Mhm.
because otherwise, when are we? Because not only are we creating opportunities for ourselves, but we're creating opportunities for others here locally in our community. And we brought people together. We had a great team. Everybody was super professional, and we shot this in 2 days.
Wow. Wow, that is a intense shooting schedule, even for a short, because you have multiple scenes and, as you mentioned, a few locations and such. So that is impressive to be able to do that in 2 days. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I do really dig the look for it. Now, I mean, it is an old west. Do you have the guns and revolvers, and how did you go about handling that, considering how much in focus such stuff like that is as of late in the last few years due to certain situations that have happened?
I can
So,
speak to that, or Justin, you can too.
well, what I would say is that we feel it's kind of important to be as true to life as possible so
Hmm.
people get an accurate picture of what's going on. Now, with that being said, we did not have live firearms on set
Okay.
because we, like most people, want to minimize all risks,
Right.
as many risks as we can. So we did have non-firing, realistic weapons on set.
And how did you find those props? Were they at a prop house? Can you just go and say, "Hey, I need like from this period piece, I need this guns," or or is it a bit of a search? I always wondered about that.
Well, we got really lucky. Our cinematographer had them available. So we got very lucky in that respect. But I'm left-handed. So I brought a left-handed holster for
Okay,
myself. And so that was one aspect because I'm left-handed.
sure.
Uh,
Y-
I mean, I could do it right-handed, but
it'll reduce the amount of takes if you do it
yeah,
left-handed.
exactly.
So in shooting a western, especially in modern times, how hard is it to avoid the modern elements working their way even in the background for what you're doing?
So I would say it is difficult.
Mhm.
It might not be the most difficult element, but
Mhm.
it certainly is. Things like n Brandon and myself are not cinematographers. We can frame shots, we can look at things, and we can line them up, but it's not always going to work out 100% the way that we see it. So when we brought the cinematographer on board, and the director, and they lined up the shots the way that they wanted to, there were elements of modern society like telephone poles,
Oh, sure.
electric, wiring, people's ring cameras and things like that that we had in modern, even modern plugs and
Sure.
lights in the rooms, air conditioning that we had to kind of frame out of the shots. As well as I believe when we were on set, during our shootout scene, we filmed near, was it a pickleball set?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pickleball court, and
It's
they were playing pickleball.
right. So we had totally framed up the shots and we were ready to go, and then a group came in to play pickleball, and we actually had to send one of the PAs over to stop them at certain points so that we could get the shots and move on.
Well, and I imagine audio as well. I've had the pleasure of being on a couple of different indie shoots, and I remember one we were shooting in a really hot barn in the attic, and the barn's supposed to be remote, like in the middle of nowhere. And so you'd have the sound guy, you'd all get ready, you'd have the shot ready, and he goes, car, and you'd wait. And you'd have to wait like almost a minute before it actually stopped picking up because it's such good audio equipment. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah, that actually reminds me on the other story that occurred. So the town is actually pretty interesting and pretty unique because the roads are fairly small and
Mhm.
thin. So there's not a lot of racing and not a lot of vehicles making a lot of sounds through there. So we were lucky in that aspect. However, the days that we chose to shoot, people also chose to bring in maintenance workers to do a lot of yard work with their weed eaters and things like that that we didn't plan on. We couldn't conceivably see that occurring. So we did have to deal with that. But once we had them pause on that, I mean, like it was pretty easy to get shots without vehicles and airplanes and things like that going over and interrupting the shots.
Mhm.
It's a pretty quiet town, reasonably quiet.
Except for the leaf blowers.
We're
The
right,
leaf
right.
blowers.
Yep. Yep.
I think it got more quiet when we got to the private property that we filmed out most of our outdoor locations. It was more when we were in the town and the hotel. Correct me if I'm wrong, Justin.
Hmm.
I think that
Yep.
was, um, and we actually got to burn a real campfire as well outdoors, which here in California with the wildfires, there's certain days that you can burn
Oh,
and
sure.
not. So we were very lucky in that aspect too, as we had one night scene
Mhm.
to film, and that was the last thing that we filmed in our schedule. So these were long hours. I would say, what would you say, Justin? More than 12-hour days?
I would say at least 12-hour
At
days.
least 12 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, at least 12 hours.
Well, it's great you got it. We're able to do a campfire because how can you have a Western without at least one campfire, right?
Right. Right.
I had to write that in. I had to have that. Yeah.
You need that traditional campfire scene, no matter what Western you're doing. Uh,
And I'm just glad it was real too, because
sure.
we might have had to have CGI'd
VFX,
it
yeah.
or
Mhm.
exactly.
When you start to do that, you have people who, even on the small and short films, are scrutinizing and looking for that. They're like, huh, let me see it. Oh, yep, there you go. Yep, it's CGI fire, or nowadays, right, AI fire.
Right. 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 Yeah. I think there's stuff just as simple as the campfire just adds such a unique element to the production and with it being real. And like I said, going back to the non-firing firearms that were on set, we want to keep it as real and as authentic as possible so that we can not only ground ourselves in the world, but
Mhm.
ground the viewer in the world so that they, feel like they're a participant in it, that that this is their world too to view.
And with it being a short film, you don't have a huge amount of time to do that. So you don't have a lot of time to maybe gloss over possibly some of the maybe in discrepancies. You don't have a whole lot of time for
Right.
that with a short film. So yeah, I could see that, and it sounds that you were very fortunate to find that location and such. Now, Justin, are you a fan of westerns?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I grew up on westerns, military
Mhm.
movies, horror movies. I mean everything. I'm a big Disney fan, but I would say that westerns and military films are probably what I enjoy the most.
Mhm. Brandon, sounds like you're a Western fan as well. Have you always been a
Oh,
Western
big
fan, or?
time.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I grew up with it. Clint Eastwood is
Hmm.
probably my top. The good, the bad, the ugly has got to be my number one
Oh yeah,
of all
yeah.
time. For me, like there's nothing that comes close to that for me. So then there's that Western, and then everything else for me follows. But I love like I want to bring them back.
Hmm.
And I feel like they're starting to get popular again. I watched, I think it was The Thicket
Hmm.
on Tubi, and I really enjoyed that. And so I'm hoping that people get excited about them again because I think we can make them really uh, more real and get people engaged in it. And
Hmm.
you can even start to have more fun and start to combine genres. So, Justin and I are looking at that for future projects as well, how we can do that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Western horror or just period piece horror.
Yes.
I'm a big horror fan, and I always love and appreciate period horror pieces because I don't think we have enough, and I think there's a lot of different settings that you can have a lot of fun with, especially Westerns. One of my favorites is there was one called the Burrowers, I think it was called.
Okay.
It's set in the Old West, and it was about creatures that dug underground. There's always Bone Tomahawk, which is a very gory
Oh
horror
yeah.
film, but
Oh,
it,
I've
you
seen
know,
that one.
you see that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Kurt
But
Russell's in it.
Yep,
Mhm.
Kurt Russell with that
Oh yeah,
wonderful. Oh yeah, yeah.
that
A
was
wonderful.
brutal.
It's it's a brutal horror film,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think what helps with it is the Western setting. One of my all-time favorites is Ravenous. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with Ravenous at all, but it is set during Civil War time, and it's about an outpost in the middle of the wilderness and nowhere. And it's basically watching these soldiers who are camped out there starting to lose their sanity and turning towards cannibalism. And it's implied one of them may
Oh
be
wow.
a Wendigo, but they're not sure. And it just escalates, and it is so brutal. It is gory. It's got one of the most disturbing soundtracks, but
Nice.
I think period horror, and I'd love to get your guys' thought, or just doing a period piece helps you kind of get rid of those modern crutches, wouldn't you say, Brandon? Especially when you're writing it, because cell phones. I mean, one of the first
Right.
thing horror films had to do was go, "There's no signal out here," because that's the first question you ask is, "Why aren't you calling AAA to tow your car?"
Well, I'm actually developing a horror western, so it's funny
Oh,
that you mentioned
nice.
that. So yeah, I'm very much into period pieces as well. And you're right. It forces you to have to do your research,
Hmm.
right? It's better, I think, overall, if you're doing something that historical, it's going to make it feel more real in the story because it did take place already, right? And so you're wrapped up in this world, but you have this element of fantasy as well, which people want to get absorbed in the world. People want to forget their problems and they want to enjoy a movie. Like
Hmm.
most people want to do that.
And for Justin, for you, doing a lot of acting in that, how fun is it to do a period piece versus, say, a more modern piece to act in?
So when I examine anything, I look at, I feel that everything's got like pros and cons.
Sure.
S-
Hmm.
So I'd be a little torn on that, but I think going back to your earlier comment, I think it allows more freedoms because you like, especially speaking of like a Western horror or a period piece horror, you don't have to rely on those things that were all like, why did your phone just die all of a sudden? Or how did your car just run out of gas at the
Hmm.
exact right time? Or you fumbled your keys 30 times before it got in the ignition. So I think that allows probably for more realism and being able to set yourself apart from a modern society and build out the character more and
Hmm.
live in it a little, maybe a little more authentically.
Well, and I would imagine it probably gives you a little more freedom to make it your own because it's like
Right.
a historical person. As long as you hit certain beats with your character, this is just a historical person. So you could think of, wow, what if this was my old relative from the old West who was a gold panner, right?
Right.
Versus being in a more modern age where it's like, oh, I'm a guy in an apartment. There's 50 guys in the apartment. There's very people. So so how do you go about making putting kind of your identity on a Western, because there's going to be the familiar elements people want, but what kind of challenge, especially writing it, Brandon, uh, that
Right.
gives you, while it allows you to play, you also want to kind of make it your own voice. And that's, I imagine, hard to do because there's so many Westerns out there.
Well, I think there's in any of my writing, I am drawing from myself and certain experiences from my life as well. I've had relationships before, obviously. So there's that element of romance that I think is important in a Western. And that's something that I wanted in this Western as well. So I really wanted to touch on every element within this film. And I really feel that I did a great job of that. And also the California aspect too is meaningful to me because I love California. And the idea that people traveled so many miles across the United States to be here for a better life, I think is the American dream that a lot of people want still today. They want this, and they're still chasing it too. Like
Sure.
there's this idea, and then the greed aspect was a theme that I really wanted to hone in on specifically. Do you know that I found myself when I gold panned for the first time, when I actually got some gold? Okay. And let me tell you, it changed me within a matter of minutes. I wanted more of it. I couldn't be okay with just a few flakes. Like I had to have more and more and more. So I myself found myself getting greedy in a short amount of time. I don't know what it is about gold, but there's something about it. In fact, I have it right here if you'd like to see
Yeah.
it. Can you see this?
Uh-huh.
This is actually the prop we used in the film, the gold nugget.
It's not real gold. Oh, that one is not real.
It is not real
No,
gold. If it was, obviously
you wouldn't be here.
I would be able to fund a feature film. But I obviously cannot.
So if I can
Yeah.
add to it, on an element of what we brought into it to make it unique from other westerns and other short films, is that the way that we approached it when we looked at the characters, we didn't want to go with the standard ideas of, there's villains and good guys and
Right.
shop workers and things like that. Because the way that we look at the world is that people aren't black and white. They're
Sure.
they're variations of gray. And so it was very important for us to show that these characters aren't inherently evil or good, but that they're human.
Right.
They're gray. We all have the choices to make, and we don't know what's going to happen when that choice is put in front of us, whatever that choice is.
And sounds like you have a couple of them. Not only do you have the gold, which plays to the greed element, but you have the love aspect, which it sounds like you have a bit of a triangle in here with your Kate, which I think those are two very core elements that you can relate to, that people can relate to in general, because those are feelings I think we all have. Now, in writing the relationship angle of this, Brandon, how
Right.
did you approach that? Did you just draw on experiences? Did you draw on stuff that has been done, in other stories? How do you do that? Because I imagine to write that as well, realistically, has to be a bit of a challenge versus going too melodramatic at times.
Well, in my earlier drafts, I didn't have Kate as a bigger character, so I started to keep developing. I had a good idea of the characters of Tully and Holt; those are the two main characters, and then Kate was just going to be a smaller part, and I was more or less going to focus on Tully, who I play, and Justin plays Holt. And so through each draft, I started to build more and more details in terms of the more specific that you can get when writing a character, the better off you're going to be. And we do this as actors too. So I create a backstory. So before we even started the production, I sent my backstory to Dania, the director, and so she could get a good look at my backstory and what happened to me before even this event, because I feel it's important to understand each character's history to
Mhm.
be able to develop. And once you understand that, I think the story starts to write itself at that point. So then I started to visualize these characters as I'm writing. So that's kind of how I do it. I actually see it when I'm writing, and I see their objective is, what they want, and what their inner wish is, and so I think being an actor is helpful because you have that background or in our training to know the work that we're the craft of acting. And so I think that just makes better writers if you know how to act as well personally.
And Justin, would you say that helps as well? Even if the backstory's not on screen, if the writer gives you a backstory for your character, does that help you for the scenes that you're in and to portray that person, even if that information's never conveyed actually on screen?
Absolutely. I think every piece of information that you can get that's authentic to the character, everything that's mentioned helps you build out the character and helps you create a more fuller experience. I myself, I like to live in the worlds that are created and live as the character. So that's, I mean, like I said, that just everything I can get helps me feel more in tune with that character.
And I will say your beard is very works well too for it. I saw it in the trailer. I am envious of your facial hair.
Thank you.
Grow
Thank you.
I cannot grow something like that. So I saw that I saw that in the trailer and I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, that looks, that looks very fitting because you always see the larger beards for those prospectors because they're not shaving out there, right?
Right.
All day.
Correct.
They don't have their Bowie knife out there going, oh yeah,
Right.
they don't care. They're too busy trying to pan for gold.
Right, yeah, and that's that was actually something that me and Brandon had discussed early on because I think I've been growing this for probably less than a year now. But at the time I had different variations of facial hair for different productions that I was
Sure.
working on. And then when he had brought the script to me, the first iteration of the script, I had discussed that I'm just going to let it grow out and grow wild because like you said, they're not shaving much you know, while they're prospecting. They're not showering that much. They're not doing a lot of hygiene
Correct.
issues. So the more, for lack of a better term, the more grimy and grungy that we can look, the better and the more authentic it is. And, you know, the easier again it is to live inside the character.
Now, you did have hygiene though on set, right? No.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So my character, absolutely different than myself. I cannot go a day without a shower.
Just, I mean, I'm all for method if you want to be method, but I imagine
Yeah.
that can make
No,
it
we
tough for the crew.
no, we both are not method actors in terms
Sure.
of the Daniel Day-Lewis extreme. Yeah, I think there is that's a whole nother conversation though, because there is some misconceptions about what method actors do.
Right.
But the extreme version, living 24/7, we're not doing that. So I think that that's unhealthy personally.
And Brandon, you know the characters because I mean it's your script, so you know the story in the back, and you can bring your own flair. How much freedom was Justin given for his character? Justin, Brandon let you have input on the character? He's like, that's not how I wrote it, Justin. Let's do this, and it's right here, sir.
I
So,
gave Justin. Oh, go
so what
ahead,
I'll say.
Justin. You can speak.
Thank you. See, he wrote that for me. So actually, working with Brandon is, I believe I previously mentioned, is very enjoyable. We've been working together for, I don't even know, like maybe 10 years, somewhere around that. Um, so he has a good feel for how we act and how we communicate. So coming in and looking at the script, Holt already talks the way that I would talk to Brandon,
Sure.
roughly. And so, and the mannerisms are roughly there as well. So when it comes to that, if after reading it, if there are things that don't exactly jive with me, or I don't
Mhm.
feel the character would say, or that I would say as a character, or that when I'd say it, it doesn't come across the way that would land, then I bring that to Brandon, and then we workshop it, and then we come up with something better. And he's very flexible, and I think that's the mark of a good writer, like a leader, is to have a vision but then to be able to listen to other people's input to make that vision better. Um, and then I will say also on set that there are times that I will throw out improv to Brandon or Tully in that regard, just to get a different reaction from him or maybe a more heightened reaction.
Sure. And then how did since you two worked together closely, you know, having the third character in here, you know, your third main character, Dania's character, Kate. How did that work for that dynamic? Was it able to, you know, did things kind of click between the three of you right away, or did you, you know, was there some work or some pre-production meetings where you just kind of sat and worked things out? How did that work out for you all?
So I would say that immediately upon our first meeting with her, when we approached her as being the director or looking
Mhm.
into seeing if she'd be interested in that, we just all automatically jived. It was great. It was a good feeling. We just kind of like three puzzle pieces coming together. Um, but we did have production meetings, pre-production meetings
Sure,
and
sure.
rehearsals afterwards just to fine tune aspects
Mhm.
of our characters in the setting.
Well, I imagine, especially with having only 2 days to shoot, you don't have a huge amount of time to work it. So you're like, yeah, well, let's rewrite
Right.
this whole part, right? You're like, what we've got is what we've got to go with. Were there any changes on the fly? I mean, you mentioned the location change, but were there any, like with your characters or what you were doing, that uh, you had a little bit of wiggle room to change the characters at all? Or was it pretty much what you had on down on paper is what you got? Would you say, Brandon?
I would say it was pretty solidified because
Mm,
there just wasn't, unfortunately, a lot of time to make heavy changes. You know, that's why we did the rehearsals before with Dania to prepare ourselves for those 2 days because we knew that there's not a lot of time to waste when you have so much to shoot. And so I would say that the preparation. The more preparation you have in pre-production and rehearsals, the better. But then again, you don't want to over rehearse it too, because then you start to lose a little of that impulse or finding something like you said new. There's always going to be a discovery. You don't want it to you don't want the acting performance to be robotic per se. So just being in the moment and allowing for that to happen and listening is critical in acting. I know Justin can relate to this, but being actually hearing now what was hard, I will mention, is that we were near a river, like a creek, and I had a hard time hearing Justin. So, in terms of how loud the
sure.
sound was, so in terms, and Justin, did you have a hard time hearing me too, or?
Well, yeah, I would say it was more like we didn't hear anything but the water. Like we didn't even hear the crew and stuff around us. We were really going
Yeah,
off of motions and signals. And for myself, and this is kind of like what I talk about living in the moment. Brandon totally was over on the side, and I was just in the scene until they clearly told me cut, and then I moved off. So if I didn't, if they didn't tell me cut, I was just still doing it for like 15,
yeah,
20, 30 minutes, just living the part.
same here. Yeah, you just kind of waited for those physical cues.
And I will say, also commenting that we were very fortunate not having to change the script while we were on set.
Mhm.
We prior to that, there were other things that we wanted to accomplish in the script, but they were would have taken more resources, more money, and more time on the shooting. So we just eliminated those before we even walked into the set and tried to keep it as simple as possible, so that when we got to set, that we could mitigate any
Sure.
issues before they occurred.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you've really put a lot of effort into the short Scar. You're in post production now. You've got your Indiegogo campaign. I was hoping Dania could join us. I imagine she's still pretty busy on the set. Uh,
Yes.
but so I think we're gonna wrap it up here. So you've got your campaign out there now. It's as of this recording, there's about 30 some hours left on it. Uh, Either one of you, it's toss up. If you could inform listeners, because I don't think they quite understand, what do you mean you've got a campaign for finishing funds? Because I think that's sometimes a question and probably a little bit harder to campaign for, because they're like, well, you shot the movie. What do you need more money for, right?
Right.
So
So yeah, so I'll start off that the production itself is was fully funded by the
mhm,
pre-production, right? Or in the production during was fully funded by Brandon and myself. As far as the post-production coming on, that includes editing, that includes adding music and scoring to the production itself, as well as the hope when you finish a film is that it's actually seen by people. And to do that, right, we have to pay for every location that we go to. So every
sure.
film festival that we submit to, whether they accept us or not, we have to pay just for the opportunity for them to review our material. If we go to rent out a theater or something like that, that all costs money. There's really no free way to get the material out in a appreciable manner.
Right. And I appreciate that quite a bit, and that's why, folks, I always am a advocate of go out and support indie films. I already shared the Instagram on my socials, the Indiegogo campaign that you have out there,
Thank you.
and hopefully you can meet it.
Thank
And
you.
if anything, I guess we'll wrap up one thing, and we'll start with you, Justin. What would be one thing that you hope people get out of Scar when they see it?
I think the most important thing for me is for people to connect with the fact that we are all variations of gray, that we're not black and white, multi-layered. Everybody comes up to these choices, and we should take more of a softer light when we view people on the choices that they make because we don't know what we would do in those situations
Right.
until we get to those situations.
Easier to say, "Oh, I would have done this," until you
Right.
actually are in a situation, and you're just like, "Oh yeah, no, that wasn't at all how that played out." Brandon, what
Right.
about you? I imagine script near and dear to your heart, but what do you hope maybe one thing that people get out of when they see Scar?
I hope that they're entertained mostly
Mhm.
and that they can, forget about their problems for a few minutes. If I'm able to achieve that, and they're wrapped up in the story element and they want to see these characters again, that would make me want to continue to. Do a series, make this into a series where, because this story could keep going.
Sure.
And so that's the goal for us, is to keep it going and engage audiences all over the world.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I appreciate you making more Westerns. I think we need more of them out there. Folks, keep an eye out for Scar. Look for the link for the campaign in the body of this podcast, and keep an eye out for when it's done. I thank you both very much for being able to make it on. Dania is with us in spirit, and hopefully maybe we can talk to her later when she has a free moment. I imagine. I saw the amount of productions she's involved with. I imagine just how busy she must be right now. But always would have happy to have you back as well for your next project as well, or
Oh, wow.
when you're having premiering Scar, or after it's made the festival for run. Would love to have you back and see how things are going with it. So check it out for Scar. Where can they follow besides Instagram? I mean, not Instagram, Indiegogo. Where can they follow possibly the progress of Scar, and when it will be releasing that? Do you have a website that they can go to for it, or?
I would say the best method is to follow myself or Brandon or Dania or the film itself on Instagram. You can also find the film listed on IMDb, um, which is probably like the one-stop shop. Um, but yeah, give me sorry, I'll let Brandon speak while I come up with the Instagram.
Oh, sure.
My handle is at Brando, Brando, Larson, Larson.
Awesome.
And for the film on Instagram, it's scar_film_2025. And for myself, it's Justin_S_McDavitt. It's M as in Mike, C as in Charlie, D as in David, A as in Alpha, V as in Victor, I as in Ice Cream, T as in Tom, T as in Tom.
Fantastic. I'll put links for that as well in the body of this podcast. Check it out. Support indie cinema, folks, and I hope you are able to get your funds and get it out to the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
And
so much, Mark. I
yeah,
appreciate you.
absolutely. Thank you for bringing us on.